having a slow metabolism or even a messed up metabolism from years of chronic dieting is one of the worst things that you can experience. But like any challenge, it's a blessing in disguise because it does teach you a few things on how to do things the right way next time. So to give you a little bit of context, I've done this a couple times in my life where I've done like a crash diet, right? I think we all have. And when I was younger, I could get away with crash dieting because when you're young, your metabolism is so robust, your hormones are so robust, you don't have a lot of stressors, you're pretty new to this whole process of dieting. But I've had some clients who have been dieting for 30 years before they found me, who just, were spinning their wheels getting nowhere. Maybe they would lose and regain the same weight over and over, and each time they would get heavier and heavier, and each time it would be harder and harder, and they thought it was just because they were getting older, but in reality, it's because your dieting history has a huge negative impact if you've done just years of crash diets, put your metabolism through the ringer on your body's fat-burning potential. Now, it doesn't mean that you're broken forever. This can be actually fixed within a relatively short period of time, but I think a lot of people don't really understand that because a lot of mainstream fitness advice is just about eating less and moving more. Now, if you're just some lazy person who's an overeater, you've been eating insane amounts of food your whole life and that's why you're overweight, don't blame it on your metabolism. But if you're somebody who has done diets, lost weight, gained it back, lost weight, gained it back, lost weight, gained it back so many times, and each time it's harder and harder, and now even if you go really low in calories and do a ton of cardio, you don't burn fat nearly at the same rate as some of the diets you did in the beginning. And whenever you come off a diet, you rapidly regain the weight faster than you even lost it. I know it sounds crazy to somebody who's never been through it before, but if you've been through it before, I've been through it before, a lot of people have been through it. And I want to teach some solutions because when you actually do get your metabolism on point, not only do you lose fat faster and obviously keep it off and not feel miserable throughout the process, but even just your mood, your hunger, everything feels better. Like when I had crash dieted myself, I was hungry all the time. I woke up in the middle of the night hungry and had to eat a protein bar to go back to sleep. Then I wake up in the morning still hungry, had to eat, right? But I was trying to keep myself in low calories. And then, at night I'd be hungry and I have to eat right before bed. Otherwise I'd wake up hungry like within a few hours. And so, this is what I was suffering from. Same thing. I was super hungry. Not only was I super hungry, but my energy levels were way off, right? My muscular recovery was off. I couldn't train as often as I wanted to. And the results were almost non-existent. I was bloated all the time. I mean, there's a lot of different things, right? And so, how do we actually fix this? Well, if you're somebody who maybe you're eating, a very small amount of calories, and for women, that might be 1,200 or less. For men, that might be, honestly, depending on the size of the man, like for me, my metabolism was crashed at 2,700, which sounds really high because some of you, 2,700 is a weight gain amount of calories for you. But for me, 2,700 felt like very little because I have a huge appetite. I've been lifting for many years, all that stuff. And yeah, I've done periods of 2,200 before, which is part of how I crashed my metabolism to where I was maintaining at 2,700 and 15K steps, which was not sustainable at all. But for a lot of men, you might be crashed at 1,600, 1,800, and 1,800 is not bad. I have plenty of clients who get great results on 1,800 and their appetite, that's totally fine for it. I have a lot of clients who maybe we have them at 2,200, whatever. Some clients even higher, depending on where they're starting, what their weight loss goal is. But sometimes these things need to be baby stepped. And if you're a man and you've gone super low, like 1,500, 1,600, you haven't been able to lose weight, or even on 1,800, you were not able to lose weight, you were barely maintaining, even with the perfect macros, even with 10 to 15K steps a day, you probably need to do a phase where you increase your metabolism, okay? If you have a fast metabolism, 1,800, 2,200, you'll lose weight. Or if you have an optimal metabolism, all that stuff as a man. And for women, maybe the 1,500 to 1,800 range. But for a lot of men, and women, people just going way too low. This is where you start to get problems and you feel miserable and you become jaded towards the whole dieting process. One cheat meal will throw you off and, you just kind of give up. And, you need to understand that there is hope. There's a better way. But there's a process that you have to go through to get there. Now, here's how you guys know that I'm not just talking about this so I can sell you some quick fix solution, right? The reverse dieting process takes time, okay? It takes a long time. We're not just going to snap my fingers, buy this product, take this pill, drink this tea, and your metabolism is going to be fixed or sped up. I don't want to call it broken, just sped up, optimized, rebuilt, right? No, it's not going to happen that fast, okay? So for somebody with very mild, metabolic adaptation, like, they naturally lost weight, they're maybe on a relatively moderate amount of calories, like, 1,800 for a man or something like that. You hit a plateau, boom. Usually after 4 to 6 weeks, you can get it faster. I mean, some people need a bit longer, like 8 to 12 weeks, but it really depends on how your body responds. Like some people are super responders. Some people, while they're reverse dieting, like maybe 10, 20% of people, while they're reverse dieting, up in their calories, which is what I'm going to teach you how to do right now, they'll actually lose more weight because, their cortisol comes down, their metabolism comes up, and they start losing weight even though they're up at their calories. But 80% of people, you're not going to lose weight. Like I'd say 60% during the reverse dieting, they usually maintain weight, maybe gain a bit of muscle. 20% of people will gain a little bit of body fat, especially if your metabolism is very suppressed and you don't have the best genetics, etc. But majority of people should be able to maintain and not really gain a significant amount of body fat throughout the reverse diet, as long as you don't go aggressive, right? I have some clients who don't mind gaining a bit of fat throughout the reverse diet, to where we can go more aggressive, get it done faster, but also gain some body fat throughout that process. But most of my clients, I try to just make sure that they don't gain body fat, and as long as they're willing to be patient enough and do the reverse diet slow enough, they're not going to gain body fat while getting their metabolism much higher. So I'll break down like what's the aggressive versus non-aggressive. The most conservative reverse diet that you can do, if you don't mind it taking like 6 months, yes, 6 months that you're not losing weight, reverse diet. If you're like 48, you've been dieting for like 30 years, you're probably willing to invest 6 months into this without even losing any weight, just to get your metabolism up so that you can lose it in a healthy way in the future. But there's also plenty of people who are 48 who would rather not take that long, so maybe you want to go a bit more aggressive. But if you want to go really conservative, increase your carbs by 5 grams of carbs per week. Now again, some of you might need to up protein and fats as well, depending on how low you are on protein and fats. Some of you who are overeaters need to reduce your fats. So again, this whole metabolism stuff is for people who are chronic undereaters. But most chronic overeaters are just eating way too much fat, maybe a little bit too much carbs as well. Sometimes enough protein, but usually not enough. For most overeaters, just bringing down the fats, bringing up the protein, keeping the carbs in a good balance, right, where it's not too low, not too high, is perfect for them to lose weight. But for most undereaters, we have to slowly up your carbs and maybe your fats. Usually I don't like to up fats on a reverse diet, but if somebody's eating like 30 grams of fat, I might get them up to 45, 55, but usually that's a, perfectly fine range. But some people who are eating under 100 grams of carbs a day, or they're doing keto under 30 grams of carbs a day, we got to baby step it up. So the most conservative reverse diet, up your carbs by 5 per week, and you should be fine. And after 6 months, that's 26 weeks, 26 times 5 means that your carbs are going to be up by, somebody do the math for me on that, like 130, right? Which is pretty good. So if you start at 30 grams of carbs, after 6 months, you're at 160. Yes, it's very slow, but you just transition yourself out of keto without gaining any significant amount of fat. But again, that's the most conservative reverse diet. Most people want to go a bit more aggressive than that. So more aggressive would be, like moderate would be, increase your carbs by 25 per week initially and just see how your body responds until your metabolism is where it's supposed to be. Then you can slow down the rate. Or if your body responds like crazy, you're a super responder, you maybe even lost some fat throughout the process, you could even, continue to go aggressive or go more aggressive. But again, be careful, because if you go too aggressive, you could gain some fat. If you don't mind, you could go very aggressive. But like for me, honestly, I like to go aggressive because I'm a little bit of an extreme person. So I've done reverse diets where I up my carbs by like 50 to 100 per week on certain weeks. And yeah, I gained some fat throughout that process, but it was well worth it to get my metabolism where it needed to be, because I lost that fat very easily. And now it takes us to the aggressive approach, especially if you're very active, you like to train, you're eager to get this done. Don't do it too fast though, right? Especially if you know that gaining a couple pounds of fat is going to really mess with you psychologically. But somebody who could go a little bit more aggressive and up their carbs by like 50 to 100 per week. And again, it depends. Like if you're somebody who's super active, you lift 5 days a week, you play basketball or ride a bike or do boxing 2 to 3 days a week as well, you could up your carbs more aggressively, especially in the first week, because you know that your body's going to use all those carbs for all that activity, right? But if you're somebody who's a little more sedentary, you only lift 3 days a week for like 30, 45 minutes, and you maybe hit 8K steps a day, you should probably err on the side of more conservative. Maybe go up by 20 grams of carbs a week. And again, if you're not sure how much you should up by, you can send me a DM. We'll go back and forth in the DMs. I'll ask you kind of like what you have been eating, what's your macros at right now, etc. If you haven't been tracking, you can track for a couple days or a week and track your weight along with it and send me that too, and I can let you know kind of where you're at metabolically, and then we can kind of discuss, and I'll see what I would recommend as far as a reverse diet. But I just want to introduce the general principle, because once you get your metabolism back up, it feels so much better. Because like, let's say that you go up by, even if you went up by, let's say you did a 12-week reverse diet, or I'm going to give you an easy time frame, 6-week reverse diet, and you went up by, 50 grams of carbs per week the first, 2-3 weeks, and then you went up by 25 grams of carbs per week after that, so that would be 75. So your carbs would be up by 225 grams more carbs that you're eating after 6 weeks. And you're unlikely to gain a significant amount of body fat, maybe 1 or 2 pounds, and you'll gain some muscle and some glycogen for sure, so your weight will go up, but actual body fat, it won't actually be that much. After 6 weeks, you're maintaining your weight on 225 grams more carbs. So if you finish your diet at like only 100 grams of carbs, now you're eating 325 grams of carbs per day. And maybe you're 200 pounds, you're eating 200 grams of protein too, and you're eating maybe 45 to 55 grams of fat. That's a great starting point for a diet. If you're already at 200 grams of protein, how many carbs did I say? 325 grams of carbs and 45 to 55 fats. All you need to do to lose weight is go down to 250 grams of carbs. Now you're in a deficit of 75 grams of carbs times 4 calories. That's 300 calories. Let's say your sets are at 8,000, you up it to 10 or 12,000. you're now losing a pound of fat a week, but don't go too extreme. It's tempting to go extreme and say, hey, let me slash my carbs back down to 150. Let me increase my steps to 15K and do 2 hours of cardio a day. Let me train 7 days a week because I want to lose this weight fast. But no, remember at the beginning of this video, I said the benefit to the fact that you messed up your metabolism, gained all the weight back, and you got fat basically even after you dieted and worked so hard. The benefit to this thing that seems like a calamity on the surface is it forces you to learn and realize that you have to take the slow, steady approach and have patience the next time that you lose weight. And so don't put all the suffering that you went through to vain by just making the same mistake of looking for a quick fix and trying to lose the weight as fast as possible again. Take the slow, steady approach this time. Learn from your mistakes. Go slow, okay? I know it's tempting. When I got a little chunky after my reverse diet, I was very eager to lose the weight as well. But I had to remind myself, no, if I just lose the weight fast, I'm just going to perpetuate the same cycle that put me in that place where I was fat with a slow metabolism in the first place, or lean with a slow metabolism and then got fat to get my metabolism faster is what I mean to say. I never wanted to be fat again. So what I reminded myself is I got to do it slow and steady. So I did it slow and steady, didn't overtrain, didn't over diet, did it slow and steady. It took more time, but it was well worth it. You know, those of you who were following me in 2023 saw that at the beginning of the year, I was pretty fat. I was eating about 4,000 calories a day, and I was 230 pounds at the beginning of 2023, January 2023. By January 2024, I was 195, like 192, 195. Like once I carved back out, about 195, 198. So basically lost like over 30 pounds and 8% body fat without having to restrict myself, with a healthy, fast metabolism to where I could eat as much as I want without gaining weight. Now, I made a dirty bulking mistake after that, before that Ramadan, which was definitely a mistake, which, you know, got me above 8% again, but that was a very sustainable place. And so, you know, we all make mistakes, right? We all go through periods where maybe we didn't think that we were doing something that was unsustainable, but before you know it, you fall into the slippery slope of doing too many steps, eating too little calories, mess yourself up. But I just wanted to kind of share with you that story and that potential possibility. I know that I can't fix everybody's problem one-on-one with a single video where I'm giving general recommendations and just introducing a concept and protocol. But for anybody who has questions about this, DM me, comment below the replay, however you want to get in contact with me. Happy to answer questions, happy to do more videos. If there's anything you disagree with or you're skeptical about, let me know too. Let's spark some debate, you know, because I think a lot of people, they only know the conventional approach to dieting, which is just eat more, move less. Yes, for somebody who's an overeater and too lazy and doesn't work out enough, that's the best way to lose weight. But for somebody who tends to overdo it with exercise, they work out, you know, just an insane amount, burn their body out, right? Somebody who tends to over diet, you barely eat anything and you mess up your metabolism over time. It's actually the opposite approach, is that sometimes less is more. So for people who are doing nothing or doing too little, more is more. For people who are doing too much, less is more. But again, everybody's different, you know. If you're not sure if you're an overeater or an undereater, I mean, you probably have some idea, but some people may not know. Send me a DM. We can figure it out, inshallah. But anyways, I got stuff to do. I'll see you guys soon. Hope you're having a great weekend. Inshallah, I'll see you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum.